The night hung heavy over the Philippine Sea, a black canvas pierced only by the faint glimmer of distant stars. Waves licked the hulls of Japanese destroyers, their engines humming a low, steady threat, unaware of the shadow moving beneath the surface. Small, swift shapes cut through the dark water, almost invisible, their crews tense, eyes fixed on the radar blips that marked their quarry. Torpedoes slept in their tubes, waiting. Minutes would change everything. Explosions tore through the calm, metal twisting and fire erupting from ships that had seemed invincible. Officers shouted orders over the chaos, but the small boats were gone before retaliation could begin. Silence fell, broken only by crackling radios and the groan of burning steel. The Japanese Navy, confident and seasoned, had not anticipated the lethal precision of these tiny vessels. In hours, the tide of naval warfare would be rewritten. January 17, 1945. The Philippine Sea stretched in endless black, its surface ruffled by a restless wind. The Imperial Japanese Navy, battered but not broken, had deployed a flotilla of destroyers to patrol near Leyte Gulf, seeking to intercept Allied movements. Intelligence had not indicated the presence of the small, elusive PT boats that would soon strike with deadly efficiency. The destroyers, bristling with 5-inch guns, torpedoes, and anti-aircraft batteries, exuded confidence born from years of combat in the Pacific. Their radar screens glowed dimly, casting green reflections on anxious faces, officers consulting maps and charts in the cramped bridges. Below decks, sailors checked ammunition and fuel, the hum of diesel engines vibrating through the steel hulls, oblivious to the tiny predators approaching. Farther west, American commanders in the shallow, agile PD boats were acutely aware of the risks. Each vessel carried only 4 torpedoes, and every decision demanded precision. The crews had trained for months in maneuvers designed to evade sonar detection and outrun enemy fire. Tension was palpable, the smell of salt, smoke, and oil heavy in the air. The boats cut through the waves silently, their silhouettes almost merging with the darkness. For these young sailors, victory meant mastery over the elements, timing, and nerves. Every ripple of the sea could betray them or conceal their advance. By late evening, the destroyer's formation had tightened, expecting routine patrols rather than a sudden, orchestrated assault. The Japanese officers discussed supply runs, scouting reports, and potential encounters with submarines, unaware that their lives were about to be measured in minutes. The PT boats, smaller than lifeboats yet packed with explosive power, had already positioned themselves along likely attack vectors. Their strategy relied on speed, surprise, and the narrow window in which destroyers could react. Outside, waves tossed debris and foam, masking engine sounds. The night's darkness, once a barrier to vision, became a weapon for those who knew its secrets. When the first torpedo struck, metal screamed and water erupted, flinging sailors and equipment into the sea. Fire spread across decks with frightening speed, the wind carrying smoke into the night sky. Officers tried to regroup, shouting orders over the din of explosions, but the scale of destruction exceeded anticipation. Moments before, they had been commanding masters of the sea. Now, they were struggling against invisible, lethal adversaries. In the shadows, PT boats retreated, almost ghosts, leaving chaos in their wake, proving that size and firepower were not always decisive. By dawn, the full scale of the night's ambush became clear. Japanese destroyers that had dominated previous engagements now lay crippled or burning, their silhouettes jagged against the rising sun. Smoke twisted into the sky, mingling with morning mist, carrying the acrid scent of oil and gunpowder across the water. Survivors clung to rafts, ropes, and floating debris, shivering from shock, seawater, and the cold wind whipping over the waves. Every detail of the assault had been executed with precision. The PT boats had struck at angles that minimized the chance of counterfire while maximizing destruction. Naval logs and after-action reports later confirmed the sequence. The torpedoes had hit engine rooms, magazines, and fuel tanks with uncanny accuracy, igniting secondary explosions that tore through decks. The destroyer's main guns, capable of devastating firepower, were largely ineffective because the attackers vanished before counterattacks could be organized. Radar operators, overwhelmed by fleeting blips, recorded only fleeting glimpses of the fast-moving boats. Officers scribbled notes in frantic attempts to understand the impossible. In the hours following, Allied command assessed the significance of the action. PT boats, once considered minor players, had demonstrated their potential to neutralize vessels many times their size. Strategically, the ambush forced Japanese forces to reconsider their assumptions about night patrols and coastal defenses. Orders were issued to deploy additional reconnaissance, reposition assets, and implement stricter anti-torpedo protocols. But the psychological impact weighed heavily. Confidence in the invincibility of destroyers had been shaken, replaced by caution and fear of unseen threats. Individual accounts preserved in diaries underscore the human element of the battle. Sailors recounted the sudden eruption of explosions, the roar of twisting metal, and the frantic scramble to abandon ship. The roar of engines, the slap of waves, and the crackle of fire created a chaotic symphony of survival. PT boat crews later described navigating by moonlight, feeling the pull of currents and the spray of the sea, hearts pounding as they watched the results of their attacks unfold. Every maneuver, every throttle adjustment had been critical. Victory was not guaranteed. It was earned through meticulous planning, training, and courage under extreme pressure. By mid-morning, Japanese command began to regroup, tallying losses and evaluating which ships could be salvaged. Reports noted damage to hulls, destruction of key weaponry, and the loss of experienced officers. The PT boats, meanwhile, returned to hidden coves and friendly bases, their crews physically exhausted but vindicated by a strike that challenged naval doctrine. The ambush on that night would be studied for years, a testament to how innovation, speed, and audacity could upend expectations and shift the balance of naval power. From the perspective of the PT boat crews, the operation was a test of nerves, skill, and timing. The vessels themselves were small, just over 70 feet long, yet packed with 4 torpedoes capable of sinking destroyers. Every decision mattered. As they cut through the night, the spray of salt water stung faces and soaked uniforms. Engines thrummed beneath their feet, each vibration a reminder of both potential and peril. Silence was crucial. Even the smallest sound could betray their position. The crews relied on radar readings, moonlight reflections on the water, and an intimate knowledge of enemy patrol routes. One miscalculation could mean destruction, yet the risk was balanced by opportunity. A chance to strike at vessels that had once been untouchable. On the other side, Japanese officers struggled to comprehend the sudden devastation. Destroyers bristling with 5-inch guns, anti-aircraft batteries, and torpedoes seemed invulnerable. Yet the reports from survivors painted a stark picture. Rapid, precise attacks that left little room for maneuver. Bridges, engine rooms, and magazines had erupted in fire and smoke, hurling sailors into the sea and shattering confidence. Tactical formations that had been effective for years proved insufficient against the agility of the PT boats. The officers' attempts to rally their crews were hampered by chaos, the roar of explosions, and the unfamiliar sight of vessels that appeared almost ghost-like in the moonlit waves. From the strategic high command's vantage, the engagement revealed both vulnerability and potential. Small, fast craft could exploit the cover of darkness, striking larger ships before they had a chance to respond. Orders for night patrols, radar sweeps, and anti-torpedo measures were reassessed. The ambush forced a re-evaluation of naval doctrine. Dominance was no longer guaranteed by size or firepower alone. For Allied planners, the success of the PT boats demonstrated how unconventional tactics could deliver disproportionate results, influencing broader operational strategy in the Pacific. Human resilience and fear intersected in every moment. Sailors in the water clung to debris, hearing distant shouts and feeling the heat from burning vessels. The PT boat crews, tense yet exhilarated, navigated back to safety, adrenaline surging with each wave. Officers and radar operators on the Japanese destroyers grappled with disbelief, piecing together the assault from fragmented reports. Every angle, whether the perspective of the attackers, the defenders, or the command chain, revealed a single truth. Precision, speed, and audacity could overturn expectations, redefining what it meant to control the seas. The perspective of the Japanese destroyer crew reveals a world transformed in minutes. They had trained for years, drilled endlessly in gunnery and formation maneuvers. The deck hummed with the familiar rhythm of engines and footfalls, officers issuing commands with confidence. Yet the night brought something new, a menace that did not announce itself until it had already struck. Torpedoes ripped through hulls, hurling men and machinery into the sea. The shouts of sailors, mingled with the roar of fire and explosions, became a cacophony of fear and confusion. Survivors later recounted the impossibility of the attack. Vessels that should have dominated the engagement were crippled almost instantly, leaving little chance for organized retaliation. Every crew member faced a sudden confrontation with mortality, the sea both a refuge and a grave. From the American command perspective, the success of the PT boats offered proof that unconventional warfare could achieve decisive results. Planners noted the precise timing, the effective use of moonlight, and the intimate knowledge of enemy patrol patterns. Strategies for night engagements, previously considered marginal, were elevated to central operational doctrine. Training intensified, emphasizing stealth, rapid maneuvering, and coordination among small craft. The psychological effect was profound. A fleet accustomed to intimidation now understood that size could not guarantee safety. Every victory, every destroyed destroyer, reinforced a lesson learned the hard way. Civilian observers and historians later analyzed the broader implications. The ambush demonstrated the interplay of technology, environment, and human decision-making. Radar, while useful, could be fooled by speed and shadow. Firepower alone could not compensate for lack of situational awareness. The PT boats exploited this gap, blending skill with opportunity. Nighttime conditions, wind, tide, and darkness, became tools rather than obstacles. The assault revealed a tactical truth. Small, agile units could achieve results that traditional doctrine deemed impossible, redefining expectations for naval engagements across the Pacific theater. Even within the chaos, individual acts of courage stood out. Sailors abandoned burning decks, pulling comrades from the water, improvising with ropes and flotation devices. PT boat crews executed maneuvers with precision, responding to every shift in current and enemy movement. Commanders calculated angles, velocities, and timing with a mathematician's focus, fully aware that a single error would be fatal. The engagement became a study in the intersection of human skill, mechanical design, and environmental factors. A brief, intense moment that revealed both the fragility of the powerful and the potency of the small. Across every vantage point, the same realization emerged. Dominance could no longer be measured purely by tonnage or armament. The PT boats' attack reshaped assumptions, challenged doctrine, and demonstrated that the battlefield's smallest participants could alter the course of engagements with decisive effect. In the darkness, the balance of power had shifted, and the lessons would echo through the Pacific for the remainder of the war. The first torpedo found its mark at 02:15 hours, striking the forward engine room of a Japanese destroyer. The hull shuddered violently, sending a jolt through the steel deck. Flames erupted as fuel ignited, black smoke spiraling into the night sky. Sailors scrambled, boots clattering against metal, voices overlapping in panic. Officers barked orders, attempting to stabilize what had become chaos. But the precision of the PT boat attack left little room for effective response. Every explosion was calculated to disable key systems, to render weapons useless before crews could react. A second destroyer, positioned 30 meters to starboard, fell victim moments later. Torpedoes severed bulkheads, tore through magazines, and forced watertight doors to fail under the pressure of rapidly flooding compartments. The wind carried the acrid tang of burning oil across the waves, mixing with seawater spray that drenched men clinging to railings. Radar operators watched helplessly, green screens flickering as blips vanished into the night. The PT boats moved with ghost-like precision, weaving through darkness, barely visible against the black horizon. Speed and timing were their allies, surprise their weapon. Above the decks, officers struggled to maintain command. Shouts of "abandon ship" and "damage control" collided with the roar of secondary explosions. Ammunition magazines detonated in succession, sending shrapnel into the air and splintering metal. Flames licked the superstructure, reflected in the terrified eyes of sailors who moments before had felt invincible. The PT boats, mere shadows in the chaos, had already begun repositioning for a final strike. The engagement unfolded like a deadly ballet, each movement orchestrated by trained precision rather than brute force. From the water, survivors recounted the terror of sudden immersion. Cold seawater engulfed them, mixed with oil and debris, as they struggled to remain afloat. Some were trapped by twisted metal. Others were pulled under by the weight of uniforms and equipment. The cries of comrades echoed across the waves, a chorus of desperation. Wind and waves created disorienting currents, making survival a matter of endurance and luck. Every moment above water was fought against nature as much as against the fire and destruction consuming the ships. Meanwhile, PT boat crews executed their final attack run. Engines throbbed, sending vibrations through the hulls, each second measured with exacting care. Torpedoes were launched at calculated angles, timed to intersect the movement of Japanese vessels. Explosions followed, ripping open decks and igniting secondary fires. Smoke and flames reflected in the rippling water, casting the sea in a flickering glow of destruction. The Japanese formation, once rigid and confident, collapsed into disarray. Command structures broke down, weapons fell silent, and the night's quiet gave way to the symphony of chaos. By 0300 hours, the assault had achieved its decisive effect. Multiple destroyers were burning, some sinking, others listing dangerously. The PT boats had vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a transformed battlefield. Japanese officers and sailors struggled to comprehend the speed, precision, and audacity of the attack. Logs and after-action reports would later record the scale of destruction, the efficiency of the small craft, and the unprecedented nature of the ambush. For the first time, the might of destroyers was challenged in such a concentrated, lethal fashion, proving that innovation and daring could rewrite the rules of naval warfare. As the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, the Philippine Sea remained restless, waves slapping against the burning hulks of Japanese destroyers. Smoke hung heavy, thick and black, curling upward and mixing with the morning mist. Fires raged across decks, turning steel into molten shapes that groaned and twisted under the heat. The PT boats, now nearly invisible in the waning shadows, had executed their final maneuvers with flawless timing. Every torpedo had hit its mark, every approach calculated to minimize exposure, leaving nothing to chance. The surviving Japanese sailors faced an unprecedented ordeal. Water-flooded compartments where men had taken cover. Ladders and railings burned under flames that leapt unpredictably. Officers struggled to coordinate damage control, but panic and chaos undermined every effort. The roar of engines from ships still attempting to maneuver collided with the crackle of fire, while secondary explosions scattered debris into the sea. Those who survived the initial strikes clung to life rafts, ropes, and floating wreckage, their hands scorched, bodies bruised, and spirits shaken. Each wave threatened to capsize rafts or drag them away from safety. PT boat crews, in contrast, felt the culmination of meticulous planning. Eyes adjusted to the first light, scanning for lingering threats. Engines purred softly as vessels cut through the waves, their small size now an advantage. They had struck decisively, demonstrating the power of speed, surprise, and coordination. Crews exhaled with exhaustion, adrenaline fading, replaced by the cold awareness of what they had just survived. The physical strain was immense, but each sailor understood that their actions had rewritten tactical expectations. Their success was measured not just in the destruction inflicted, but in the message sent. Even the largest warships were vulnerable to swift, determined, and well-trained attackers. The broader strategic impact became immediately evident. Japanese command scrambled to assess losses, tallying casualties, and damage across multiple vessels. Destroyers once considered virtually impervious now floated as burning skeletons. Orders were issued to reinforce patrols, adjust tactics, and implement more stringent night engagement procedures. Across the Pacific theater, naval planners noted the efficiency and audacity of the attack. PT boats, small, fast, and relatively lightly armed, had achieved what conventional doctrine had deemed improbable, challenging assumptions about firepower, formation, and control of the seas. Witnesses later described the surreal aftermath. Smoke lingered like a curtain over the shattered fleet, the smell of burning fuel and charred wood thick in the air. Twisted metal reflected sunlight in jagged, blinding flashes. In the water, sailors drifted silently, waiting for rescue, some clinging to life for hours. The PT boats had disappeared, leaving nothing but wreckage and a profound sense of awe at the effectiveness of their attack. The clash of engineering, human skill, and daring risk had produced a moment of history, a concentrated lesson in the changing face of naval warfare. By 0600 hours, the Philippine Sea was eerily quiet, save for the crackle of dying fires and the distant calls of survivors. The night's engagement had demonstrated the lethal potential of innovation, timing, and courage. In mere minutes, the PT boats had shattered the dominance of destroyers, leaving Japanese command reeling and Allied forces emboldened. The battle, brief yet decisive, would be studied for years, a testament to the fact that, in war, agility and audacity could outweigh size and firepower. The Philippine Sea, once calm and dark under night's cover, now bore the scars of devastation. Burned-out hulks of Japanese destroyers floated listless, their twisted superstructures reflecting in water still stirred by residual waves. Smoke hung like a shroud over the scene, carrying the acrid scent of fuel and scorched metal. Survivors clung to rafts, debris, and ropes, eyes wide, bodies trembling from shock, cold, and exertion. Some had lost comrades entirely. Others were nursing severe burns or lacerations from twisted steel. The human toll was staggering, yet amid despair, an unspoken resilience emerged. Sailors worked together, improvising flotation aids and signaling for rescue, each movement a testament to training and survival instinct. The PT boat crews, having returned to friendly bases, debriefed meticulously. Logs recorded every angle, every torpedo trajectory, and every maneuver executed in darkness. Commanders noted environmental factors, moonlight reflections, wind patterns, wave height, that had aided their precision. Each action, every throttle adjustment, was evaluated for lessons learned. Morale among these small crews surged. They had executed a near-impossible strike against a numerically and materially superior opponent. The significance of their actions extended beyond immediate destruction. Strategically, the ambush demonstrated that speed, stealth, and daring could neutralize conventional naval superiority. Japanese command faced a stark reality. Destroyers that had dominated the Pacific were no longer invincible. Naval officers compiled damage assessments, tallying ship losses, ammunition depletion, and casualties. Debriefings revealed critical failures in formation, radar utilization, and night engagement tactics. Orders were issued to reinforce coastal patrols, reposition remaining vessels, and adjust anti-torpedo protocols. The psychological impact on officers and sailors was severe. Confidence in traditional doctrine wavered, replaced by wariness, doubt, and a grudging respect for small, fast attackers who struck with surgical precision. Across the Pacific, Allied naval planners analyzed the attack in detail. Reports highlighted how small craft could exploit environmental conditions, intelligence on enemy movements, and precise timing. Training for PT boat crews was intensified, emphasizing night operations, stealth, and coordinated attacks. The lessons extended to broader operational strategy. Size and firepower alone were insufficient. Flexibility, adaptability, and the ability to capitalize on surprise became central tenets of naval warfare planning. For the PT boat community, the ambush reinforced their value, elevating morale and reinforcing the doctrine that small, agile units could decisively influence engagements. Eyewitness accounts provide insight into the human cost. Survivors described the terror of the explosions, the sudden immersion in cold water, and the disorienting confusion of night combat. Some clung to rafts for hours, watching flames consume vessels and comrades alike. Rescue efforts were arduous, complicated by ongoing fires, shifting wreckage, and the need to avoid unexploded ordnance. Accounts from Japanese sailors emphasize both the intensity of the assault and the remarkable skill of the attackers. The juxtaposition of fear, survival instinct, and awe painted a vivid picture of the psychological and physical challenges endured. The material aftermath was equally significant. Destroyers that had once been symbols of naval power were either destroyed or rendered inoperable. Ammunition stocks had detonated in secondary explosions. Fuel stores had ignited, spreading fire across decks. Repairs required extensive dockyard resources, diverting attention and manpower from other operational priorities. The loss of experienced officers compounded the tactical disruption, creating gaps in leadership and coordination. In the weeks following the ambush, Japanese naval strategy reflected caution and an altered approach to night patrols, acknowledging the lethal potential of small, fast vessels. The environmental and sensory imprint of the engagement lingered. Smoke stained the horizon, flames reflected in water, and the pungent odor of oil and burned metal clung to the air. Waves carried debris across the sea, a constant reminder of the previous night's violence. The clash had demonstrated the intersection of human skill, technology, and natural conditions. PT boats, despite their modest size and limited armament, had achieved a level of destruction and strategic effect that challenged conventional expectations. In the broader scope of the Pacific theater, the ambush underscored a fundamental truth. Warfare was as much about ingenuity and daring as it was about numbers or firepower. In the days following the ambush, the Philippine Sea remained a theater of both reflection and urgent activity. Allied forces cataloged the damage, confirming that multiple Japanese destroyers had been sunk or rendered inoperable. Naval intelligence combed through survivor accounts, reconciling conflicting reports and mapping the attack sequence with remarkable precision. Analysts noted the effectiveness of stealth, speed, and environmental exploitation, confirming that PT boats had executed a textbook operation against a superior force. Commanders highlighted the tactical lessons for future engagements. Even the smallest units, when well trained and coordinated, could alter the balance of power in a theater of operations. For the Japanese Navy, the psychological impact was profound. Experienced officers, some veterans of decades of naval warfare, were forced to confront an unsettling reality. Conventional doctrine could not guarantee dominance. Meetings convened at forward bases were tense, filled with heated discussions over night patrol procedures, convoy formations, and anti-torpedo defenses. Engineers assessed the vulnerability of hulls, torpedo warning systems, and engine compartments, seeking solutions that could prevent repetition of the devastating surprise. Confidence in long-established strategies wavered, replaced by caution, doubt, and heightened vigilance. The human cost was meticulously recorded. Hundreds of sailors had perished, while survivors bore injuries ranging from severe burns to broken bones. Medical teams worked under challenging conditions, treating both physical wounds and the shock that lingered long after rescue. Rescue vessels navigated treacherous waters strewn with floating wreckage, oil slicks, and unexploded ordnance. Sailors recounted the sudden onset of terror, the heat of raging fires, and the cold immersion in salt water. Personal narratives, preserved in diaries and official reports, captured both the horror and the resilience exhibited during those harrowing hours. Meanwhile, the PT boat crews returned to a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. Debriefings emphasized not only tactical success, but also the precision required to execute the operation. Every element, angle of attack, timing of torpedo launches, coordination among vessels, was scrutinized and documented. Commanders recognized the operation's broader significance. A single night had demonstrated the potency of asymmetric warfare. For the small crews, the ambush was both a validation of training and a grim reminder of the stakes involved. Their courage and skill had reshaped naval assumptions, proving that audacity, discipline, and intelligence could match or exceed raw firepower. The strategic implications rippled across the Pacific theater. Allied planners incorporated lessons from the engagement into future operations, emphasizing speed, flexibility, and night maneuvers. Small craft training intensified, radar use was refined, and tactical coordination across units became more precise. The attack had shifted perceptions of what was possible in naval warfare, challenging assumptions about invulnerability and reinforcing the importance of adaptability. In operational reports, analysts highlighted how PT boats could disrupt supply lines, ambush larger vessels, and exert a psychological effect disproportionate to their size. Environmental factors, often overlooked, played a decisive role. Darkness, moonlight, wind, and current all combined to favor the attackers. Waves concealed approach, currents aided maneuvering, and reflected light provided navigational cues. The Japanese fleet's reliance on standard night patrol procedures proved insufficient against crews who had internalized these subtle nuances. The engagement became a case study in the integration of human skill with environmental awareness, illustrating that warfare demanded mastery not only of technology, but also of context. By the end of the week, the Philippine Sea bore the quiet aftermath of a brief, transformative encounter. burnt-out vessels remained as somber markers of what had occurred, and the surviving sailors carried memories of terror, endurance, and near miraculous survival. The PT boat operation would be analyzed, studied, and emulated, an enduring testament to the power of precision, courage, and innovation. It became clear that in modern naval warfare, the smallest forces, when properly employed, could produce results that reshaped doctrine and reverberated far beyond a single night. The ambush in the Philippine Sea stands as a stark reminder of the evolving nature of warfare. In mere minutes, small, fast vessels challenged assumptions about size, firepower, and dominance, proving that precision, timing, and courage could outweigh conventional strength. The PT boats had transformed the night into a weapon, exploiting shadows, currents, and surprise to devastating effect. Their success was not accidental. It was the product of rigorous training, meticulous planning, and an acute awareness of both human and environmental factors. For the Japanese Navy, the engagement became a lesson etched in both strategy and memory. Ships that had seemed invincible were reduced to burning hulks. Officers confronted the limits of established doctrine, forced to adapt under the harshest conditions. Survivors carried scars, physical, emotional, and professional, reminders of how quickly advantage could shift, even against a force they had once deemed unstoppable. The attack demonstrated that innovation and daring could challenge not just vessels, but the mindset that governed naval operations. From the perspective of the PT boat crews, the battle exemplified the convergence of human skill and mechanical precision. Each torpedo launched, each maneuver executed under moonlight, reflected discipline and courage. The operation reshaped how small units were valued in naval planning, showing that audacity combined with intelligence could deliver disproportionate impact. In retrospect, the engagement illuminates a broader truth. War is not simply a contest of numbers or firepower. It is a test of ingenuity, adaptability, and resolve. The night of January 17, 1945, serves as a vivid testament to how decisiveness, precision, and the willingness to exploit opportunity can redefine the course of battle, leaving a legacy that endures in both history and doctrine.